Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Sovereign Sisters Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Atkins of Your Health Unbound, and today we're going to dive into a topic that's becoming increasingly important as consumers become more aware of what goes into their food, and I've called it Decoding Food Labels, what certifications really mean for you. And this is going to include organic food certification, the Non-GMO Verified Project, and more. So if you've ever wondered what it takes for that certified organic label to show up on your produce, meat, or dairy at the grocery store, this is the place to be. So we're going to explore the process that a farmer needs to go to obtain an organic certification and all the associated costs that are involved with becoming certified and what it means for the farmers, the consumers, and the environment. So first off, what is organic certification? Well, it's basically an assurance that a farm or business has met strict national standards set by governing bodies like the USDA in the United States or the European Commission in the EU. These standards ensure that the production of processes of foods avoid things like synthetic pesticides, herbicides, genetically modified organisms, and it's also emphasizing sustainability, animal welfare, and soil health. So, in short, when you see an organic certification label, you know that the product you're buying has been produced following practices which we interpret to be for the health and well-being of the consumers and the environment. But there's a path that the farmer has to go through in order to get that organic certification. It's not an overnight process. It really requires a lot of planning, time, and dedication. So the first step is called the transition period. So if you have a farm that's not been organic, in order to qualify for organic certification, the land must be free of all the prohibited substances that, like synthetic pesticides or fertilizers for at least 3 years before any crop can be labeled organic. Well, during this time, this farmer still has to follow all the organic practices, but he can't sell the products as certified organic until that entire period has ended. So that means he's moving towards organic, but he's still within the 3-year period. He can't call it organic. Can you imagine 3 years of extra effort before you can even market your product as organic? Okay. So what is required by the USDA and these governing bodies? Well, first off, they have to develop an organic system plan or an OSP. This is a foundational step that the farmer has to take in order to achieve this organic certification, because it isn't just a document. You can't just whip it up overnight. It really is a comprehensive and detailed roadmap that outlines every single practice that the farmer has to use on their land to ensure that they meet these organic standards. This outlines every aspect of the operation, including the types of seeds, the soil management techniques, pest control, and even animal care if they're animals that they're raising for food. Try to think of it like a blueprint that the certifying bodies use to measure whether a farm is adhering to the organic principles. But let's break down what that organic system plan is and what farmers need to do, because I think you'll be surprised just how detailed it is. So first, the farmer needs to provide a detailed description of their land. That includes the total area they plan to cultivate, where their fields are located, and buffer zones. Now, buffer zones are crucial because they prevent contamination from neighboring non-organic farms from pesticide drift. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So a buffer zone is essentially a protected barrier of land that separates the organic farm from a neighboring non-organic farm. Now, these zones are really critical because they help shield organic crops from unintended exposure to synthetic chemicals, such as the pesticides and herbicides, which might be used on that nearby conventional farm. But here's where it gets tricky. Even if a farmer is doing everything right on their own land, they use organic seeds, natural fertilizers, sustainable pest control methods, their crops can still risk contamination from those neighboring farms. And this is where pesticide drift comes into play. So basically, pesticide drift, just like it sounds, is when chemicals like the pesticides or herbicides, which are sprayed on conventional farms, end up drifting over to another farm. This can happen when the wind blows and the chemicals across the fields, or if the chemicals evaporate into the air and they just travel before settling. It's almost like a cloud of tiny particles that can move from one place to another without anyone noticing. For example, let's say a neighboring farm is spraying pesticides on their crops to control weeds or insects. If the wind is blowing towards the organic farm, tiny droplets of that pesticide can be carried through the air and land on the organic crops. Now, even though the organic farmers didn't use any chemicals themselves, their crops can still be contaminated because of this drift. So why does this matter to organic farmers? Because the organic standards are very strict. Even trace amounts of synthetic chemicals can jeopardize a farmer's organic status. If an organic crop has found any residue or from substances that are prohibited, the farmer could face penalties. And worst of all, he could really blow the trust that he's had with his customers. So that's why buffer zones are such an essential part of the organic system plan. So see how the burden is always placed on the organic farmer and not on the conventional farmer? The conventional farmer doesn't have to do anything to prevent the pesticide drift, but the organic farmer has to do this because he needs to create and maintain that buffer zone, which means he has to dedicate a portion of his land to be the buffer, which he can't grow any additional crops or any additional organic crops. And if he weren't growing organic crops, he'd be using conventional means, he would just negate what he was doing with the organic crops. So it really is a difficult situation because of this drift. And not only do they have to be aware of how this buffer is managed, they have to keep records of it in the organic system plan. Now remember, this is like a blueprint. So they have to, regularly check wind patterns and coordinate with neighboring farms to know when their spraying schedules are and mitigate however they can. Again, the onus is placed on the organic farm. All the costs and resources are intensive. I'm wondering, is this to discourage more farms from going organic? I understand the reason why. Why don't we flip it on its head? But that's not the way it is today. So let's move on with the process. Because without the buffer zone, the integrity of their organic status would fail. Farmers would have a much harder time to ensure that their crops stay chemical free. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes because they have to keep everything as pure and natural as possible. But again, it's still only a requirement for the organic farmer. So again, this land use history process where he has to talk about, in his OSP, he has to talk about everything that goes on, he has to do it for the previous 3 years before he even gets his certification. So he has to make sure that none of the prohibited synthetic chemicals have been applied, no fertilizers, pesticides, genetically modified organisms, or anything that could disqualify him from having this section of his farm as being his buffer zone and then remove him from certification. So that's during the transition period, that 3-year period, the OSP has to describe everything that's happened in that time up until the time he's going to get his review for his organic certification. Now, there are other areas that the farmer has to include on this organic systems plan, like how they nourish the soil, how they're improving soil fertility, how they're preventing soil contamination. It's just a long list of things they have to make sure that they cover. The organic farmer has to protect the land from these practices that are used on conventional farms that may be near them. So let's look at the overall farming practices and how they impact the food that reaches us, the consumer. So if you're purchasing from organic products for plant products, there are specific things that are allowed and disallowed. So they're disallowed, there can be no synthetic pesticide, herbicides, or fertilizers. Organic farmers have to use natural or non-synthetic substances, which sounds like natural to me, to manage pests and soil fertility. This means they have to use methods that are biological, like introducing beneficial insects, or mechanical, like hand weeding, or using traps for pest control, or companion planting, which will naturally repel pests. So the farmer has to show that he's prepared to manage all the challenges facing for keeping this land natural and pure through preventative means. He has to make sure he's using sustainable farming methods such as crop rotation and biodiversity. And most of all, organic crops cannot be genetically modified or engineered in any way. That's the biggest thing right there on top of all of it. Now, here's one thing that concerned me when I read. It said, when possible, farmers must use organic seeds. If organic seeds aren't available, they need to document and prove why they've made every effort to source them. So does that mean you can use non-organic seeds? Yes, but they still can't be treated and they have to be non-GMO. So there's a fine line distinction there, things you need to look at and question. Now, if you're looking at organic animal products, one of the things they say that animals must be fed 100% organic feed. That's free of synthetic hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified feed. So no GMOs can be fed to these animals. The other thing that they need to have access to the outdoors. They need fresh air, and they need to be raised in conditions that accommodate their natural behaviors, such as animals that need to freely roam to graze. Now, here's a big thing that got me. It says no antibiotics or hormones, but certain vaccines are permitted. That's a red flag to me, and I think that's a question we'll talk about later. The plan also has to outline the preventative healthcare practices, including veterinary checkups, natural remedies they'll use if there are any illnesses, such as herbal treatments. That's that they need to put that in there before they ever resort to other methods, because they're trying to do things as naturally as possible. But the biggest thing is they have to keep detailed records of everything, all treatments administered, the veterinary checkups, everything, if they ever want to get their organic certification. Now, again, the key aspect of this organic certification, they say, USDA, is traceability. They want a comprehensive documentation and record keeping. Okay, so the farmer has to use these records to describe every aspect of his operation, seeds and other purchases, what activities go on in the field, whether it's planting, fertilizing, pest managing practices, harvesting, and sales records, the livestock feed, as I said, the veterinary treatment logs for those who have animal products. Okay, this is in addition to farming. He needs to record everything, and they need to be up to date and available for review during inspections. One thing, if there's a lack of sufficient documentation, that's the most common way for farms to lose or fail their certification. Now, there are other processes that organic certification requires. It's like how the water is managed, how the field is processed after harvest, conservation practices, etc. So you can see there's a huge burden placed on the organic farmer, which takes time, money, and resources. This is a massive undertaking, and it's an ongoing process for an organic farm to obtain their certification. Now, any farm that undergoes an in-depth inspection has to have it done by a certifying agent, usually from the USDA Farm Service Agency. Now, if the farm passes the inspection, they're granted their organic certification, but it doesn't end there. The certification has to be renewed annually, which includes another round of inspections, updates to the OSP. All those things have to go on all the time, every year. And if there's any deviations from the organic standards, they can result in fines, or they could even lose their certification. So it's no wonder that the cost of organic foods is more expensive, since there's a lot more that has to happen in the background before the food even arrives for sale. So let's talk about numbers. The cost for organic certification includes an application fee, which could range from like $100 to $500, depending on the size of the farm, its location, and the certifying agent used. That was an interesting thing that I found. All these things are available from the USDA if you want to go look them up. There are inspection fees, which are charged either on an hourly or a per day basis. Now, so small farms can get charged anywhere from $500 to $1,500. Again, I think these are estimates. I don't think they're necessarily actual numbers. While larger farms could face fees like $3,000. But there's also those annual renewal fees, which can range from $250 to $1,000 every year, depending on the size of the operation. And of course, there's all these additional operating costs, which increase expenses because they have to purchase organic seeds. They have to use natural pesticides, which are more costly than the conventional stuff you can buy just about in any, big box store or any local hardware store. Plus, they need the additional labor just to manage the farm's sustainability. Now, this can seem like a significant investment, and I believe it is, but there is financial assistance in the form of a government program that are available in some regions in the U.S. So I looked it up. The USDA offers reimbursement through the Organic Certification Cost Share Program, the OCCSP, up to 75% certification costs. Here's the kicker, with a maximum of $750 per scope of certification. Okay, so they have a budget in fiscal year 24 of $9.5 million. So how many people are getting that $750? Now, again, I always ask questions. I wanted to get a breakdown. How much of those funds were actually provided to organic farmers? And when I went to the USDA Farm Service Agency, it said that I could submit a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA, request to get that information. I'm a taxpayer. Shouldn't that information be readily available to me? All these other sites have all the information. Talk about transparency. Where is it? I couldn't find it. I may put in the FOIA request, but it couldn't do it in time for this podcast. But I really think it's interesting that you have to go through hoops in order to find out how that money was distributed. Makes me concerned. So we ask, is organic certification worth it? Well, it's clear it's not an easy path. It takes dedication, time, money, and it's funny. Someone says it's criminal, and I think in a way it is. It's criminal that there's not the transparency from our government agencies to tell us what exactly is in, what the funds are being distributed to what farmers, how many farmers get it, and why only $750 when this is something that's ongoing every year. It's pretty outrageous to me. But anyway, I digress. For many farmers, I think they think the benefits outweigh the challenges, and I get it, because I'm really glad that there are farmers out there that are willing to jump through these bureaucratic hoops to ensure that customers get the best possible food they can produce. And I'm happy that I live in an area where there are farmers like that go out of their way to seek organic certification or do the best that they can to make sure that their food is produced in a manner that provides the most nourishing benefit to their customers. So let's look at the different certifications that you see on the products at the grocery store. Again, we were just talking about certified organic. That's through the USDA. So here's the fine line here. The USDA Organic means that at least 95% of the ingredients in the product are organically produced. That means the remaining 5% of ingredients can be non-organic, but they have to be on the approved list of substances that aren't synthetic. We'll look at that shortly. So farmers have to follow guidelines, like I just told you, to avoid the synthetic pesticide, herbicides, fertilizers, the GMOs, right? They're all prohibited. And the animals have to be raised on these organic standards, that they have to have access to the outdoors, fed 100% organic feed. I question that too. How can you get 100% organic feed if there are certain allowances? But I'm following what they said. And they have to be, without the use of antibiotics or growth hormones. But remember, certain vaccines are permitted. That's why it's important to talk to your local farmer and find out what practices they employ. So there are a wide range of products, food, beverages, even textiles that carry the certified organic label that because they meet the USDA standards. But here's a higher standard that maybe you should start looking for. It's 100% certified organic. That means 100% of the ingredients, excluding water and salt. That always gave me pause. Excluding water and salt. So how's it 100%? It's 100% minus water and salt, whatever that equals. But the products have to be certified organic. It seems to me there's always that little excluding this or accept that. But I guess it's as close as you're going to get in today's society. Like certified organic, it follows the strict USDA guidelines, but there's no allowance for any non-organic ingredients, except maybe that water and salt. Just saying. So this label means absolutely everything in the product is organic and no synthetic substances are permitted. So you can find that usually on single ingredient items like fruits, vegetables, some packaged foods. I wouldn't say too many, but you can find it 100% in milk or grains where all the components are already certified organic. Now, while organic certification is one of the most well-known labels in the food industry, it's not the only one out there. There are several other certifications that consumers can see on the food packaging. But before we do that, let me show you a list between, I'll do it in a minute. I wanted to get to the non-GMO first. Let's talk about that next. So there are a litany of certifications out there, and I think the one that most people have seen more readily besides organic is the Non-GMO Project Verified, and this focuses on different aspects of food production. It is known that certification is a known certification and well recognized, but it does differ from organic certification. By definition, genetically modified organism refers to plants, animals, or microorganisms that have been altered in a lab using genetic engineering techniques. Now, this is totally different from traditional breeding methods that humans have used for thousands of years. It is a genetic modification. The Non-GMO Project standards say it means that it's been independently verified to meet strict standards for avoiding GMOs. This includes testing for GMO contamination, only ingredients that are a high risk for being genetically modified, like soy, corn, and canola, which in the United States is probably about 95% of those products grown here are genetically modified. So the difference from organic is that it covers multiple aspects of production. Organic looks at all the various things, the pesticides, the inputs, that whether they're synthetic or not. But the Non-GMO Project Verified is focused only on GMOs. It doesn't necessarily mean the product is organic, but it ensures that GMOs have not been intentionally used in any of the products. So Non-GMO Project Verified products may still use synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. So if you see the Non-GMO Project Verified label, you can trust that the product doesn't contain GMOs, but it may or may not be organic. So you might want to look for both labels to ensure the product has the right criteria for you. So here's the things we talked about. We have certified organic, which is the USDA top choice, and then 100% organic. So they cover the production practices, the prohibition of GMOs, synthetic chemicals, and they also promote the animal welfare. The Non-GMO Project Verify focuses only on avoiding GMOs and doesn't address the use of pesticides or synthetic chemicals at all. So just to repeat so you remember, certified organic has at least 95% organic ingredients with 5% allowed on an approved non-organic list. I'll go over that list shortly. 100% organic requires that all the ingredients be certified organic, except the water and the salt. Just saying. So the Non-GMO Project Verify ensures that no GMOs are in the product, but doesn't guarantee that the product is organic or free from synthetic inputs. So let me show you a graphic that just described to you. So it's basically a checklist on the left and the words on the right, but it's the same thing. Non-GMO Project literally says no GMOs allowed, and USDA has all the other factors, no synthetic chemicals used, and specifics, no antibiotics and all. So when you're looking for products and you only see a label that says Non-GMO Project, look for other labels on it, specifically the organic label, because you're getting a product that may still be using synthetic pesticides. Now let's move on to how they have this list that, to me, I'm amazed at government agencies. The more I do this research on government agencies, I get floored, because the USDA has this national list of allowed and prohibited substances, and it just outlines which synthetic and natural substances can and cannot be used in organic farming and food production. Okay, so this applies to both crops and livestock, anything that's processing organic food. So here are the allowed substances for organic crop production. This, again, plant, not animal. So they can use alcohols such as ethanol and isopropanol for disinfecting equipment. Okay, you want to have clean equipment before you process your foods. I get that. And then you can use chlorine materials like sodium hypochlorite, calcium hypochlorite, chlorine dioxide for disinfecting tools, surfaces, and irrigation. Well, okay, you still want to have cleanliness and your water clean. I get that. You can use insecticide soaps for pest control. Okay. We have to say, I'm hoping there are standards that say how much, how you have to do it, because you don't want residue. So I'm hoping all of the guidelines are very elongated. I was looking at probably the short form. But then they say that you can use copper sulfate. Now that's used as a fungicide, but it says with limitations to prevent overuse. So I went and I pulled up PubChem, which is an NIH, National Institute of Health website on chemical compounds. And it says the limitations are there because improper exposure can be harmful to humans, but allowable in organic farming as a pesticide and fungicide. Okay. I question, again, I guess it's amount of degree here. I just have to wonder is there a better way? Another one is hydrogen peroxide. Well, I'd vote for that first because hydrogen peroxide is very natural. That would be the great thing to control plant disease. Then they add another item that they have on the acceptable list is parasitic acid. This is used for disinfecting surfaces and as a fungicide. Now, although PubChem, that website on the chemical compounds, says it's toxic if swallowed, harmful if contacted with skin, toxic if inhaled, and on and on. So again, I have to question it. Now here's one that I don't really understand how this works, but they say it's allowable, a biodegradable plastic mulch. Okay. Says it must be compostable. I get that. They want to have, able to have sustainability, so you want it to compost, and it has to meet certain requirements. But I just want to make a note. This is a microplastic, and it could be made from a petroleum-based product. So I don't know if I want that around my food production. I'm just not certain how the USDA says that that's an okay thing. Now, here are the natural substances that are prohibited in crop production. So you can't have ash from burning manure. Well, that's great. I had never thought of that. I don't know who's burning manure to put in food production, but it says it's prohibited because it could be contaminated with heavy metals. Okay, that's great. So another one is arsenic. Yeah, I'm glad that's not allowed because it was used historically as a pesticide, but they discovered it was toxic, so they banned it. And another one is strychnine. Another one that is very harmful to humans. So They used it for controlling pests in the field, but they found it was harmful to humans, so they disallowed it. That's the only three that they have disallowed on the natural list. Okay. So let's look at the allowed substances for organic livestock production. This is where I get concerned. So this is something that is specific to all of the USDA's governance about product safety. Now, remember, we're talking about animal health and welfare. So they allow vaccines as a preventative health care for livestock. So I have to think, if the animal gets the vaccine and I eat the animal, I'm ingesting whatever's left over from that vaccine. Not sure I want to do that. They also permit aspirin to use for pain release and fever reduction. Do, do livestock really need aspirin? I'm just curious. Another one on the disallowed list is chlorhexidine, which is great because they used it for treating wounds and disinfection. PubChem states it's harmful as swallowed, can cause allergy or asthma symptoms, difficulty in breathing, and more. Just a whole list of it. So it's amazing to me how long it takes for these substances. I mean, this is a synthetic substance that's allowed to be used with our livestock, in making our organic food. Now, some of the things like electrolytes and vitamins and minerals, I'm okay with that. I think that's great. But then they say you can use lidocaine and procaine, which are local anesthetics for surgery. Now, I don't know what the lifetime of the anesthetic staying in the body, but I would hope that animal would be taken out of whatever route it has to be heading to for production as an organic food, because we know nowadays that lidocaine and procaine are not clean. Let's just put it that way. We have to be careful with our words, that there are some other materials in it that we probably don't want our animals being injected with, nor do we want to ingest when they take it. Now, what are the things that are prohibited in livestock production? It's the same thing, the strychnine and the arsenic. Okay, that's great. Don't want those chemicals in us, but wow, how many things can we look at? There are plenty of things that we have to concern ourselves with. So what are the things allowed in food processing? Well, they allow things like pectin as a thickener and stabilizer. Okay, calcium chloride, they use that in cheese making. There's tartaric acid, which comes from grapes and wine production. And there's yeast. I think the thing they say here is specifically non-synthetic yeast, which I think is very good, because when you have synthetic yeast or GMO yeast, it can come from really bad sources and really harmful for people to ingest. So I think this is a very specific one. How do you determine it? You hope that they're doing the right thing and following all the right practices. And then citric acid. Now, this is naturally derived. Citric acid is used as a preservative, and it comes from basically citrus fruits. But I know there are other methods, and I'm hoping because it's on the organic processing that they're only talking about natural sources. Now, what's prohibited from organic food processing? You can't use any synthetic preservatives like BHA, BHT, and all those other combination of preservatives. They can't go in it at all. You can't have artificial colors, no synthetic color additives. Anything like that is completely banned in organic food. The one thing that is really great is that GMOs, those genetically modified organisms, are prohibited in any form whatsoever. It can't be an ingredient or an additive that they can use. So I guess it goes back to the yeast. It has to be the natural form. So sulfites, nitrates, and nitrates are banned in organic food processing because there are health concerns with it. You really need to check the labels when you're buying things at the store like bacon and lunch meat, because many times it'll say right on it, that it either has it or doesn't have it. And if it has it, it can't be certified organic. So let's go back and talk about what we're saying. about how organic foods are 95% organic and 5% of those ingredients can be non-organic. They have to come from that approved list, but they can use non-organic substances like gums, lecithins, enzymes, as long as they meet the guidelines. And again, that's very unclear. And I guess unless you're a farmer getting these guidelines handed to you, it's very unclear what those things are. And my suggestion to you is read all food labels before you purchase any product at all that's not a single ingredient. If you're going to a farm direct purchase, talk to your farmer, ask the hard questions. That's really the important part here. You need to take the personal responsibility. Now, there are other certifications that you may have seen in the store. So one of them is the Fair Trade Certified. You'll see this on products like coffee, chocolate tea, bananas. So what does that mean? It means that the products were made under standards that promote fair wages, safe working conditions, sustainable practices, especially in developing countries. And it aims to create a more equitable global trade system by protecting the rights of small farmers and workers. That's great. The focus of this certification is our products have to meet environmental standards, but the main focus is on social and economic aspects of the production. Let me give you an example. Fair trade ensures that farmers and workers are paid fairly for their labor and have access to resources like healthcare and education. Okay. But many fair trade products are also organic, but they don't have to be. Don't confuse them, or as I hear all the time, don't conflate them. Just because you see it says that it's, a fair trade product, it doesn't automatically mean that they're organic. It does promote the sustainable agriculture, and sometimes they overlap in what practices they do, but one does not equal the other. You really have to look and be clear what you're looking at. If it just says fair trade, it's not organic unless it states it's organic. Now, another one of these certifications is the Rainforest Alliance Certified Seal. It's just another label that emphasizes sustainability, but their focus is on conserving biodiversity and promoting sustainable livelihoods for farmers and communities, particularly in tropical regions. So this certification focuses on practices that protect natural ecosystems and minimizes the environmental impact, which also aligns with many organic principles. So like fair trade, the Rainforest Alliance also emphasizes social responsibility. Certified farms must meet the standard that promote safe working conditions, decent wages, and community development. Now, this differs from organic because Rainforest Alliance certification doesn't have strict rules about synthetic pesticide use, but it does encourage farmers to use safer alternatives, but it doesn't mean that you have to. So I'm going to show this one comment. I truly agree. Can't wait to have a grocery store where it's all real food. That's right. Food shouldn't have to be labeled certified organic or 100% organic or whatever. It should just be organic. That should be the default, because it is without a doubt the one thing that we're missing is food that is nutritious. If we have to search through everything, and I know when I go to the grocery store, my husband and I look at every package, read it out loud, and we do this for effect so people around us can hear, and say, what is this? Why is this in here? Because if it's real food, you shouldn't have 47 ingredients. Real food is real food. You don't need to have all these additives. Food should be ingredients. They should be single ingredients that you make up. It's not a whole package of ingredients to make up one thing. So let's move on to another one of the certifications. So any consumer who's concerned about animal welfare, the Certified Humane label is one of them. This certification focuses on the treatment of animals raised for food, such as dairy cows, chickens, pigs. So the certified humane farms have to meet specific guidelines for how the animals are treated. They have to have access to clean water, healthy food, specific amounts of space to roam. And the certification prohibits practices like the use of growth hormones and routine antibiotics, which is great. But it's different from organic certification because the standards are just for the animal welfare. And it provides the guidelines for how the animals must be handled and cared for all their life, but the products may or may not be organic. So again, you have to look for, maybe you get the two together. You find one that says certified humane and organic. And this is the way the savvy consumer will shop, looking for multiple certifications. So let me show you a graphic that kind of outlines what I've been talking about. So I really want you to understand that there are many different food certifications, and there's more than the few that I just mentioned. I found a whole bunch of different ones, and I thought there's just not a time to go into all of them. But they each focus on a different aspect of production. Most of them have, similar traits of, animal welfare or whatever. But when you look at things like the non-GMO Verified Project, they're just avoiding GMO. That's the one thing that they do. And it doesn't matter if it's organic or not, even though many products are more than one certification. I think you really need to make sure that you're reading all the certification and all the labels, the nutrition labels on the packages, because some of the things like the Rainforest Alliance, they're just looking to, protect the environment and help provide fair wages to the farmers and the workers. And I get it, that's great. But one, cannot be enough in this society. Our food has been so manipulated that we really need to think about what we're putting in our bodies. So as a consumer, looking at these certifications is just a way to offer how we want to buy things. We align our purchasing decisions with our values, whether it's prioritizing the environmental sustainability, ethical labor practices, or the humane treatment of animals. But for the most part, we're looking for food that nourishes us, food that's going to keep us healthy. Because remember, food is information. It tells your body everything you eat has a message, information that it sends to your cells. If it's good food, your cells respond to doing what their jobs are. It gets the right information. If it's bad food, it doesn't get good information, and the cells don't know what to do. And many times it can be destructive in many ways. We can our health, it can destroy our DNA if we're eating the wrong types of foods, genetically modified organisms. It really is important for us to look at everything we're eating. Now, for farmers, certifications provide a way to help them stand out in the marketplace. Like I said, you're going to be looking for labels now. It's like, oh, this is the one that I want because it's got 3 or 4 of these certifications. But that's not all there is. We have to look at all the layers that go into this, look at all the ingredients. They may be what you need, they may not be. But do check out the certifications on the products you purchase. It will help you get the best products on the market as of today's standards. And like the comment we had, one day I hope it's not even necessary that all food will always be organic. When you walk into the grocery store, you won't have to think about it. But until then, I really do hope you do a little research before you go to the grocery store and just pick up the same old product you always have. Instead, make a practice, take time, don't rush. Find a day or an hour or two where you're not rushed and you just have to go grab some groceries. Just to go pick up the product, read the labels, make certain you understand what they are, make sure they fit with the health standards that you want to see, and make sure that they are the right certifications that you believe in, whether it's organic, non-GMO certified, whatever it is, because it comes down to taking personal responsibility for our food choices. You have to actively seek out the knowledge about where our food comes from. It really is important to get to know your farmer. Whether they grow plants or raise animals, you need to ask the tough questions. It's really necessary. Do ask them, do you use synthetic pesticides or herbicides? Or, see if their animals are treated with hormones, antibiotics, or if they do give vaccines. Then investigate the farm's location. Are they situated near a conventional farm that uses synthetic sprays, which could cause the drift onto their crops? And even if the farm isn't certified organic, it's our duty to ask if they grow their food and raise their animals without the use of chemicals. One of the most critical questions we can ask is simply, is this a chemical-free farm? And the farmer's response can reveal a lot. If they're vague or they avoid answering directly, it could be a sign that they aren't using the best practices for producing high quality, nutritious food. Well, ultimately, it is our responsibility to ensure that we're informed and vigilant about the origins of our food. The more proactive we are, the better equipped we are to making healthy, conscious decisions. And I look forward to doing more along this line, finding out the good, bad, and ugly of our food, because that's my focus as an integrative health and nutrition coach. And I thank you for tuning in. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share it with your friends. And, just reach out. You can always send an email and tell me what kinds of topics you would like to have covered. I'd be happy to research them for you. I really do enjoy looking this stuff up. And I'm hoping that this information provides you and empowers you to go out when you go grocery shopping. Do what we do, pick up the package. And if you can't understand what it says when you read it, say it out loud. Say, what is this? It sounds like a chemical. Why would I want to eat that? Put it back on the shelf, because now you're influencing the people that are near you. And hopefully, little by little, as we influence people to look at their food, that will get healthier as a society. That's really what we want to do. We want to have a healthy society. We want to help everyone get to be the best that they can be. So as I said, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And until next time, I hope you stay curious and be aware of the food, where your food comes from. And until then, I have to say, God bless you.